What is going on, Goombas? My name is Michael James. I'm a published author and self-employed writing coach, and today we are going to be talking about 5 common mistakes I see writers make with their characters. And if you're someone who struggles with writing characters and making characters that are realistic or making characters that you feel are unique and special and help your story feel that much better, then hopefully some of these tips can be beneficial to you. So without any further ado, grab yourself a coffee, get yourself a cozy writing sweater, and say hi to Gwen. And let's get right into it. So as a writing coach, one of the main things I'm doing is reading manuscripts and drafts for my clients, whether it's editorial assessments or alpha reading or a specific editing service on a full manuscript, whatever it is, I am reading a lot of manuscripts. Some of the feedback I leave is on the characters, whether it's the main character, a side character, or the villain, whoever it is in the story. Oftentimes there's a character that needs work or multiple characters that need work.
Let's do this thing!
Don't feel alone. This is something that many writers struggle with. It is very difficult to nail the characters. Characters really do make or break a story. If you don't have compelling, unique, exciting, intriguing characters, then your reader will not want to slip into their shoes, be immersed into their world, and get to know them. Hopefully these 5 common mistakes will help you. This isn't an exaggerated list. There's obviously more out there, but hopefully these are a good starting point for you. So the first common problem I see many writers make when it comes to their characters is having a character show the wrong personality in specific situations. It would be like if you had your main character laughing at a funeral or crying at a birthday party. These are things that obviously can happen. It can have a jarring effect that's purposeful, but it can also cause issues in the emotions and the feeling of the scene. It doesn't fit. Even worse than that is when you have a character's personality not fit a respectable occupation. Let's say we're writing a detective murder mystery, and this detective loves to study the crime scene. He loves to see the blood. He loves to study how did the intruder get into the room, and they like figuring all that stuff out. That's fine. You can have a character be intrigued by those things and excited about those things, and maybe they talk to their friends back at the precinct about it, or they talk to their girlfriend at home about it, but you wouldn't have them go to the victim, like the family member's house and talk to them about it like that. Like, they wouldn't be like, man, this is an awesome murder case. Like, no.
It's very awkward and cringy.
And you would be surprised how many writers I see do this without even realizing. Make sure that you are having your character be respectable in the right situations, and their personality fits the situation when necessary. You don't want their personality to fit for a certain reason, like make that reason clear. But for the most part, you want your character to be realistic in the sense that they are respectable to others, especially when it comes to like their occupation and stuff. It can put a bad taste in our mouth when we see a character joking around at a funeral, or see a character saying that this murder scene's awesome in front of people that are mourning the murder. Like, stuff like that just doesn't fit. Common problem number 2 that I see writers make is having their characters play dumb. They have their characters ask really stupid questions just so they can progress the plot.
Right. What are we doing again?
You might have a character that says, oh no, what are we going to do now? And then the other character says, I have an idea.
Light bulb moment!
And they just spew exactly what's going to happen next. It's such a cop-out way to progress the plot through the dialogue instead of just having them move forward. You could skip that dialogue and go right to the part where they start doing something.
Get to the point, will you?
Make sure that you're not having your characters ask really obvious questions or play dumb so that you can progress the plot. Or even like, I see this in some fantasy worlds, they have a character play dumb in the sense where they're like, how does the magic work again? Or, oh, I completely forgot that you had that ring that has this special ability that does this, that, and the other thing. And the other character will respond like, yes, and don't forget, it can also do this, and you're just explaining and info dumping through the dialogue. Try to avoid having characters ask obvious questions that would be obvious to them in the setting. Let the story speak for itself, we can figure this stuff out on our own if you just let the story play out. And then, if there's details that you need to explain, wait until you've already written a draft so you see what details aren't there anymore, or see what details aren't there yet and you need to incorporate them. Then you're going to be having them ask less stupid questions than in the beginning. Problem number 3 that I see writers make with their characters is having them always agree on everything. This is a big issue because conflict helps progress the plot. Conflict helps a story feel unique, it adds another level of depth to the characters themselves, and it just makes it more compelling to the reader if there's things that aren't going well. I just did a new podcast episode on my podcast if you want to check it out, but in that podcast episode I was talking about the tropes and archetypes that are in the movie Kung Fu Panda. And one of the things that we see early on is conflict almost immediately as soon as the story begins. And if you've seen the movie Kung Fu Panda, basically we have the main character, Po, who has a dream in the very beginning. And then after his dream, he goes downstairs and his dad was like, what was all the banging and ruckus upstairs? And Po was like, oh, I was just having this dream. And he asks him, what were you dreaming about? And Po lies. Po doesn't tell him that he's dreaming about being a Kung Fu master. No, Po says he's dreaming about noodles because his dad owns a noodle shop. And the whole reason that we have a scene like this is to introduce conflict early on in the story. We know that the want and desire of these two characters is at odds right from the beginning of the story, and that creates intrigue. It causes us to be compelled by their relationship, and we want to know, how do they solve this issue? How do we see resolution between Po and his dad? We know that this conflict, this butting of heads is going to happen more and more just by it happening once. We know it's going to happen again. Make sure you're not having all your characters agree all the time, because if they're always agreeing, then we're not being compelled to see how they resolve issues together. And that's where you see a lot of character growth, a lot of character depth, and it's just really helpful. So make sure you have different characters arguing in different spots. Don't just make them argue for no reason. Like, make sure it's connected to the plot in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's like having your characters be at odds with another character, or have their beliefs founded on something that another character disagrees with. Just make sure there's differences in your characters so it creates an interesting dynamic for your reader. Problem number 4 that I see writers make with their characters pretty often is having one-dimensional characters. And you've probably heard people say, oh, this character's one-dimensional, or try to avoid one-dimensional characters, but they don't always explain what that means. How do you make a character more than one dimension? To make a character more than one dimension, oftentimes it means that you only gave one attribute to them, whether it was a physical attribute, an emotional attribute, or a mental attribute. The physical attribute is typically something that has to do with their occupation, the way they look, or whatever it is. It's something physical about them. It is the easiest one that most people will have in a character, but then they don't do the other ones. The emotional aspect is how they feel. It has more to do with typically their personality. So it might be that they're a stressed person. It might be that they're super happy and chirpy and chippy all the time. Maybe they get ticked off really easily. Whatever it is, you should find some kind of emotion that you can make them unique about, even if it's something specific where they get ticked off when people make physical contact with them. Maybe like if someone puts their arm around, they're like, don't touch me.
No touchy. No touch.
Try to think of, even if it's something small and specific, like try to think of an attribute that makes this character unique in a certain way. And then the thought process is a little harder to think about sometimes, but think about, what is this character's philosophy? What is this character's way of thinking about life? How do they make decisions? It can be that this character is an atheist, or maybe they're religious. You could be more specific. Maybe they're a Buddhist. You could say that they're a bad decision maker. Maybe you could say they are a risk taker. And if you have one attribute about all three of these, you have more of a three-dimensional character, in the sense that you at least have three specific attributes that make them unique, that will affect how this character is seen by your reader, and how you describe them to the reader.
Layers! Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers. You get it. We both have layers.
Let's say we have a character, give them a physical attribute, at least one. Even if it's a side character, even if it's a character only mentioned once in the entire story and they have a few lines of dialogue in one scene and that's it. You should try to think of these things. So the physical aspect might be, this character's a carpenter. They work with their hands, they work with wood, right? The emotional aspect is maybe they are angsty. They're always anxious. They're always worried about something. They can't turn their brain off. They're always thinking about stuff. They're stressed out. And then the third aspect, this would be the mental thing. Maybe they are a bad decision maker, which would go along with the emotion. And now we have this unique character, and maybe he's working on building a chair and he's freaking out about stuff, stressing out on what to choose, and he can't decide whether it should be walnut or cherry or oak. or maple and whatever wood he's supposed to use and stuff like that. That's what I would do. I would try to avoid having a character that you only describe, their hair color or their occupation or whatever it is. Try to think of a few other unique things that you can pull out, and they don't have to be specific things that you tell us about them, like, John's a Buddhist. You don't have to say it, like, just try to show it. Maybe he mentions karma. Maybe he talks about feeling enlightened. Maybe he says that there's no accidents in life. Different things like that, like the way they talk, the way they think about things, the way their perspective is all going to be unique based on their way and walk of life. So try to keep that in mind when you're building characters.
And there you have it.
Now, before I get into problem number 5, I do want to make a quick announcement. If you didn't know, You've Got the Wrong Guy has been released. This is my new book. If you want a signed copy of this book, you can get a signed copy from my support page. You can get it signed just like this one. This is the large print edition. There's also a smaller version that is a smaller font, and then there's also hardcover editions as well. So if you want to personally support me, you can buy it from my support page, or you can grab a copy from Amazon. It just won't be signed. You can also get a Kindle copy if you're more of a Kindle reader. One other thing, if you do get a copy directly from my support page, you do get this cool bookmark with it, which is really cool, and obviously it's signed. So that will directly support me if you want to support me in that way. I've received a lot of great feedback from this book, and something that's really cool is everyone says they love the characters. So don't take my word for it, but if you want to learn how to write some great characters, I have it on good authority from my reviewers that I have some good characters in this book, so check it out. And then last but not least, problem number 5 is that writers struggle with having characters all talk the same way. And this is a difficult one to overcome, especially for newer writers, but keep in mind what I mentioned in the previous step of how you make one-dimensional characters turn into three-dimensional characters. We're thinking about their physical aspects, their emotional aspects, and their mental aspects, thinking at least of one of each, but then adding to them. You could think about what are their hobbies, what are their personalities, what is their occupation, how do they dress, are they comfortable in their own skin, do they struggle with feeling pressured about things, do they like talking about a specific topic, do they describe things like a specific thing all the time. Like if someone works on a boat, they might describe things like a boat all the time. Or if you have a doctor character, he might speak with a more sophisticated tongue because he's someone who probably studies and reads a little more. Or you might have a character that works on a farm, and the way he talks, he has a little bit of a twang in his voice, and he uses words that aren't as common, like maybe he calls people yellow belly. Try to think about how somebody's specific environment and culture that they've grown up in affects the way they speak. Their dialogue is like the best way to get us to see who this character is and really hear who this character is. So hopefully that is beneficial to you. Hopefully all 5 of these have been beneficial to you. I hope that you have learned something from at least one of these tips, and if you were lacking any confidence in writing your characters, hopefully one of these has given you just even a little bit more confidence so that you can make your character stand out, elevate your writing, and just make a better story overall. That's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this content, and let me know in the comments below if you have anything else you want me to specifically cover. As a reminder, you can go over to my support page. I have a podcast over there if you want to check out the podcast. There's some free episodes, and then there's also a few episodes that are members only. Those who support me in that way are helping me be able to spend more time making content and write books. And another reminder, if you want to get You've Got the Wrong Guy, grab a copy today. You can get a signed copy from my support page, or you can grab a copy on Amazon, in Kindle, and other places like that. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.